Good evening. Polling in the three states, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Assam and the Union Territory of Puducherry have been relatively smooth, barring one or two places that witnessed issues related to electronic voting machines, and these were attended to immediately, is what Election Commission officials have said. Bengal, however, did report stray incidents of violence in some areas that are voting in the third phase. Over 20 crore people from Assam, Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry voted in a mammoth electoral exercise today. For the latter three, this was the first and only phase of polling. It's Assam's third and final, while Bengal has as many as 5 more. Well, joining us now, Arvind Gunasekara. He joins us from Coimbatore. Arvind, give us an idea of some of the key battles over there. What's at stake from where you are reporting?
Vishnu, we are at the Coimbatore.
The voting here is already over. Now the ending process, the completion process is currently underway, where the Election Commission officials taking along the booth agents of all the parties in front of them, they are trying to seal the EVMs that were used for polling here, after which it will be taken to the storage room. So the polling is over here. We are reporting from the Coimbatore South constituency.
We are reporting from the Coimbatore South.
Makkal Needi Mayam's chief Kamal Haasan is contesting from, and also from BJP side it's Vanadi Srinivasan, who is the national women wing party chief women wing president of BJP, and coming from Congress side it's Mayura Jaikumar. So it's a three-cornered fight in this constituency. But if we could check the polling percentage, it's less than 55%. It is one of the lowest polling percentage that has recorded in the entire Coimbatore district. When you take data as of 5 p.m., we are awaiting the 7 p.m. data. If you could take the western region, which has always been a stronghold of ADMK, the western region that includes Erode, that includes Salem, Coimbatore, Nilgiris, and Karur, etc. Coimbatore has polled somewhere around 56 to 58% as of 5 p.m., which is again relatively less. If you could take the overall figure is somewhere around 65% as of 5 p.m. We are awaiting the 7 p.m. Data. So as of this moment, the polling has got over across the state and without any law and order issue. That's what the Tamil Nadu Chief Electoral Officer has said. So the polling is already over. The EVMs will be taken to the storage room, and we have to wait till May 2nd to get to know the results. Vishnu?
All right. Well, that's going to be a huge day. Ratnadeep Chaudhary joins us from Guwahati, as does Monideepa Banerjee, who joins us from Kolkata. Monideepa, what's the voter turnout in Kolkata been? Monideepa, can you hear me?
Sorry.
What's the voter turnout in
That's right. Now I
Kolkata
can
been?
hear
Yeah.
you. Yes,
What has the
lovely.
voter turnout been so far?
Got it. In most of the 31 constituencies that we've got feedback for, it is verging on 80%. A little low in some of the Hooghly booths, but otherwise in the Hooghly constituencies it seems a little low, but otherwise around 80% already, and I'm talking about 5 o'clock. So by the time it finally counted, it'll all be over 80. As usual in Bengal, very high turnout, also huge number of women coming out to vote, as we have seen through the day. Of course, there have been incidents of, violence, if you could call it that, and by Bengal standards, honestly, it has been reasonably okay, but many are willing to say that the third phase has been the phase with the most number of sporadic incidences of violence. The most shocking, of course, was the way the candidate of the Trinamool Congress was chased out of a village booth by BJP supporters. This was in Arambagh. Sujata Mondal Khan, she had to run across an empty field chased by people with lathis to escape being beaten up. Even then there was no end to her trauma. Her car was surrounded and the windscreen smashed. That was certainly the most startling picture and image of the day. Other than that, sporadic incidents of clashes, sporadic incidents of candidates being either harassed, heckled or manhandled, and even voters were not spared. There were many incidents of voters being intimidated. In some places the voters resisted. There have been 2 deaths but so far not directly linked to any election violence today. One death is of a woman who was murdered in the dead of night. The other is of a Trinamool poll agent who died apparently after scuffling with the BJP. But so far we know it was reported as a cardiac arrest. We are still to confirm whether there was any connection with an election process. And finally, of course, there was the case of 4 EVMs ending up in the house of a Trinamool leader in Uluberia and Howrah. For that, the sector officer who was in charge of the EVMs has been suspended.
All right, Muldeepa, thanks very much. We'll come back to you later on. Let's go quickly across to Sam Daniel, who joins us from Chennai. Sam, what were some of the most high-profile battles in Chennai today?
Well, in terms of high-profile battles, one is Khushbu, who fights on behalf of the BJP. She is making an electoral debut at 1000 Lights, a constituency largely known as DMK Bastion. And she faces Dr. Elilan, someone who works with youngsters spreading the Dravidian and rationalist ideology. And Khushbu is supremely confident, although the BJP had suffered a near rout in 2019 Lok Sabha elections. She claims that a lot has changed over the last few years, particularly the way EPS has established himself as a leader, overcoming the tussle he had in the party, and also how she claims the ruling AIADMK has been able to bring in lots of investments and development through the tie-up, through their alliance with the BJP at the center. In terms of polling across Tamil Nadu, Vishnu, it's been only around 64% according to the 5 p.m. data. And this, many would say, is quite disappointing because last time the state witnessed 74%, and this is hugely there's a huge difference in terms of the massive crowds, the rallies by these political parties witnessed, even despite the COVID scare across Tamil Nadu. In that sense, it's a disappointment. So the DMK could be in that sense worried that they expected a kind of a huge turnout, particularly after opinion polls projected a huge win for them. But others argue that perhaps people who only wanted a change of government had turned up in large numbers. So it's a kind of a debate going on depending on from which side you're talking from. But otherwise, the polling has been largely incident-free. The other key candidates to watch out for would be in Coimbatore, actor-turned-politician Kamal Hassan facing BJP's Vanadi Srinivasan. In fact, he consciously chosen to fight from Coimbatore, although earlier he wanted to fight from Chennai. This because he thought it would be easier to fight two national rivals, BJP and the Congress, instead of having to face directly the DMK or the AIADMK. And that will be interesting to watch whether the Coimbatore residents there would prefer Kamal Hassan or the BJP, as the BJP is also believed to have some kind of little stronger presence in Coimbatore. And other key candidates would be, of course, in Chennai, if you take MNM's Velachery candidate, the former IAS officer Santosh Babu, who is contesting from there, and also BJP's Annamalai, who is contesting from Karur district, the former IPS officer. The AIADMK believes the dynastic politics campaign it took against the DMK, and also the kind of measures, investments it claimed to project, it was able to bring into Tamil Nadu with alliance, with the help of the BJP alliance, would help put them in good stead. But and also the promises they made, like free washing machines and 1,500 rupees for women. On the other hand, you have the DMK banking on its 2019 huge sweep in Tamil Nadu, and it's hoping that the alliance that Tamil Nadu voters rejected in 2019 would help them to repeat that kind of a big win this time as well. Of course, we have new players like Kamal Hassan, TTV Dinakaran, and also Nam Tamlar Katchi by director Seeman. We'll have to wait and watch what kind of an impact will they also be able to make. First election after the death of two icons, Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi. Whether would Stalin emerge to be a stronger leader, or would EPS emerge as a stronger leader? They're trying for a third term, and being out of power for 10 years, it's a now or never moment kind of situation for MK Stalin as well. Vishnu.
All right, Sam, thanks very much. Let's go across now to Sneha Mary Koshi. who joins us from Thiruvananthapuram. Sneha, what about the political turnout? What's that been like? How have political leaders reacted today?
Well, Vishnu, very interestingly, it's a pandemic time, and yet if you look at 6:55, as of 6:55, the turnout has been around 73.58%. So that seems to be a very good turnout. If you look at the 2016 assembly elections, the turnout was around 77%. So it's not exceeded that. At one time, you really thought that would happen. But we're coming to you from one of the polling stations. The voting has just gotten over, and now it's the last minute packing where all the booth agents and all the police officials are doing the last rounds of all the checks and the packing. So this being a day which has been very decisive, there are certain things politically, as you mentioned, there have been certain reports of clashes between CPIM and BJP activists on the ground in some parts of Thiruvananthapuram, the Karakutam constituency. There's cases which have been registered. Some activists linked to the CPIM have also been taken into police custody. The police is also looking at others. Allegations of how there were attempts to thwart the voting process, of course, from both the fronts. But that's one side. Largely, if you look at the at what has been happening, so this is a very critical political battle in Kerala for all the three fronts. If you look at left, now the left is aiming at least for a consecutive re-election, looking at creating history. The Congress-led front, that front is looking at coming to power after 5 years. It's a state which has alternated between the two of them largely. Neither of them can afford a loss. And in between all of this, you have BJP, who has fielded some high candidate, heavyweights like E. Sridharan, hoping for a E. Sridharan wave as such, and hoping to increase its numbers. Like currently it has one MLA in Kerala. But if it does increase the numbers, or even if there's an increase in the vote share, what would this translate for the traditional two fronts in Kerala that have alternated on government? Vishnu, also, even though, if you look at what has been happening in terms of the campaigns, development has been an issue, to and fro over corruptions of allegations, and the counter to that from the ruling front has been an issue. Sabrimala has become an issue with the opposition, which is the Congress-led front, as well as the BJP, both strongly opposing women in menstruating years to enter Sabrimala, something that the Supreme Court had given a verdict in favor of. However, that is right now pending before the court. Now, even today, there was literally a war of words, even on this issue. So when a reporter asked the Chief Minister in response to a comment from one of the other leaders, the chief on how a leader has said that Lord Ayyappa is not going to be blessing this government. The Chief Minister literally responded, not only Lord Ayyappa, but also all the other gods are going to be with the left government because they have done everything they could to ensure people would be protected and provided for. So that was what the Chief Minister said. Ramesh Chennithila, the opposition leader, quickly moving in, saying that after all the decisions that they have taken, now they are trying to bow before Lord Ayyappa. So lots of to and fro over the Sabrimala issue, even on the voting day. However, all said and done, this is a crucial battle for all these three fronts, which are trying to, as I mentioned, in some constituencies, there's also a triangular fight, literally, between these three parties, which is seemingly increasing over the last few elections in comparison to what it would have been perhaps a decade ago. With all of that in Kerala, this is definitely one of the key elections in the state, and people seem to have really come out in large numbers. 73.58% as of 6:55 is definitely not a low number, a low percentage of turnout. So that is, of course, people coming out and making their statement. Of course, we'll have to wait for a month to see what exactly that statement is. But a very, very close, tight fight, especially between the left and the Congress fronts in Kerala. Critical fight in terms of not only in what is happening in the state, but also in terms of what their role would be nationally. We must remember the left and the Congress are allies in West Bengal, but notwithstanding that, they both have been fierce opponents in Kerala. and of course the BJP holding no stops at all to ensure that they give a tight fight.
All right, Sneha, thanks very much. Let's go across now to Ratnadeep Chaudhary. Ratnadeep, how have elections in this area that you're reporting from today been different from last time around in terms of voter turnout?
That's right, Vishnu. In fact, today the third phase of polling took place in Lower Assam for 40 seats. And remember, in Lower Assam, we have always seen high voter turnout. Last time it was 86%. So till 5 p.m. it is somewhere around 79%. It is supposed to pick up and it should cross 80%. So in terms of voter turnout, maybe, in all the phases, all the three phases, we have seen that the turnout has been little less than, the 2016 election. But remember, I think this is a striking difference in the sense that in the 2016 election, when the BJP created a political history by, dislodging the Congress government, which was in power for 15 years and thereby establishing the first BJP government in Assam, that was a time when there was a wave in favor of the BJP. But this time we traveled extensively before the elections. We covered, campaigns of top leaders like Narendra Modi, Amit Shah, Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, Congress leaders like Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, Rahul Gandhi. We didn't see any wave in favor of any political party, but yes, there have been undercurrents, there have been, strong pockets and also weak links for both the ruling alliance, the BJP and its allies, as well as the Congress-led 10-party Mahajot. Now, this has been an election of many firsts in Assam. For Assam, this has been a very interesting election because this is for the first time that there were three-phase polling. Remember, polling started in Assam on 27th of March with the first phase, and today was the last phase. And in three-phase election, in all the 126 seats have gone to poll. And also this was the first time that none of the alliances, neither the BJP-led alliance nor the Congress-led Mahajot, actually projected a chief ministerial candidate. Also for the first election for the Congress, where it didn't have its stalwart Tarun Gogoi after his demise. This is the first election for the Congress where it didn't go solo, but in the form of an alliance. And it joined hands with one-time arch-rival Badruddin Ajmal's AIUDF. This 10-party Mahajot itself was something that it took a bit of time for people of Assam to fathom and to understand whether this really worked out or not. But as the election process progressed, what we saw is that the alliance really took the fight to the BJP-led alliance. Remember, in the first phase, what we saw is that the 47 seats that went to poll, particularly Upper Assam and North Bank of the Brahmaputra, the Northern Assam, as well as parts of Central Assam, the BJP in those areas had clear advantage because in 2016 election, out of those 47 seats, BJP and allies had won as many as 35 seats. But this time, what has happened is it has been a very high decibel campaign in terms of the Assam elections. In one side, you had the Congress, which came up with its concept of 5 guarantees, 5 big promises for the Assam elections, including a wage hike for the tea garden workers of rupees 365, to repeal of citizenship law in Assam, and many others, to which the BJP countered with its promise of 10 Sankalp or 10 resolutions for Assam, which includes a big promise of coming up with flood-free Assam. So whether a flood-free Assam would be possible or not, we'll have to see in the days to come if they form the government. But if they have to form the government, they have to retain the seats that they have won in Central Assam and Lower Assam, where the fight is. And perhaps on May 2nd, we'll get to know who forms the government in Assam. But it has been a high decibel campaign election, and an election where people took interest, and a very close fight between the BJP-led alliance and the Congress-led Mahajot.
Thanks very much, Ratnadeep, for joining us.